The question on everybody's lips here is, did this customer know that it had a fault? I've been in touch with the customer as well and had a little bit of a whinge, and I'm going to talk you through how that went. What I'm going to do first is show you in the car and show you the problem that we've got with this engine light on a £55,000 Jag. Good morning, good afternoon, and indeed good evening, whatever time you might be watching this, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me. You've joined me because either you're a subscriber and you're rejoining, great to see you again, or you're joining me because you've seen that a car dealer's got another problem. Well, I do have a problem. First of all, before I start off this video, I'd like to apologise. On the last video, it was quite an open and honest one, and I was sat in my conservatory and I was talking about how I felt as a human being, and there was a comment on there, a couple of comments actually, of people criticising my attire. They weren't happy with the shorts I was wearing, they weren't happy with the colour of the shorts, and I'd just like to apologise that they were a bit of an iffy colour and it won't happen again. Right, this is a Jaguar F-Type, and I bought it from a subscriber. He got in touch on one of the videos that I've done recently on, we're trying to buy cars off Auto Trader, so I've got a very nice car for you for sale, Rob, and it might be a bit of you. So we did loads of dialogue talking about it, we agreed on a price, he brought it down about a week ago, and we shook hands and did a deal. And as far as I was concerned, that was it. Nice car, nice deal. Wipe its backside and put it online. But as you've seen, that has not been the case, and we've been faced with the engine light of doom. So this car is a 2021 Jaguar F-Type R. It is obviously the facelift. It's the first of the facelifts. It's no longer in main dealer warranty, which I'm obviously thrilled about with the engine light, but it is incredible. It just needs fixing. 5 litre V8 supercharged, 575 horsepower, 4-wheel drive, weapon. It's just another bloody problem, isn't it? What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it in, have a little look around the car, try and diagnose the problem. I already truthfully know what it is, but I want you to see what I've been doing, and then we're going to try and fix the problem as well. I've been in touch with the customer as well and had a little bit of a whinge, and I'm going to talk you through how that went. What I'm going to do first is show you in the car and show you the problem that we've got with this engine light on a £55,000 Jag. To say I was a little bit mortified about this situation is an understatement. So this deal seemed perfect. The guy was really sound. The car was perfect. We've got this topped-on machine that we use to scan it. I'm going to show you this machine today. Actually, they've sent it across to us, which is why it says pay promotion, because this was free. Thank you. Everything was all right, checked out all right on all the car checks. I drove it. I did about 3 or 4 miles in it. I gave it some pillock. It was fine. And then it wasn't until he left, I then started driving it home, that the engine light decided to illuminate. So it was a little bit upsetting, to say the least. Anyway, I'm going to show you what I found with this machine. On here, you can basically work out everything that your car's doing. And I ran it through just to see what problems was giving us this engine light, which you can see is illuminated, although it will stay on when we fire the car up as well, which is obviously a problem. I've learned that from some of the old videos. So what we're doing here is go on and we find Jaguar, and then we'll run a full scan, and it'll tell us absolutely everything that is wrong with this car. I already know what it is, and it upset me. Okay, so this is the car. Everything's right, VIN number's right, everything adds up. We checked all this before when we bought it, so I know everything's okay. It's only done 24,000 miles, this car, which is even more upsetting, because you'd kind of expect it wouldn't really have any problems. And it's always the way, isn't it? It happens with me when I sell a car to a customer. I'll drive it for a month with no problems, and they'll buy it and drive it down the road, and it'll come with a fault. Anyway, apparently this is common. I'm going to show you what it is now. Right, so we're now ready to full scan the car. I'm going to do the whole lot because I may as well do while I'm in here. So basically what this system will do is it'll tell you everything that's going on the screen, or you can have it email it to yourself as well, so you can have like a file emailed across. But it'll run through everything on the car and just see if it can find any faults. And so far, nothing, which is alarming because the engine light's definitely on. Ah, we've got one. We've found one. Here we go. Right. And there we have it. So I have had this with F-Types in the past, and it is basically an O2 sensor. Now, they're not expensive parts, and this was a real relief when it came up, because when the engine light came on, I was admittedly driving in a bit of a spirited fashion on my way home. However, for it just to be an oxygen sensor, I'm all right with. It's just they're a bit of a pig to get out, depending on where they are. So what I did was I put this code into Google to find out what the problem was. And it's telling me on here, so it's saying oxygen sensor signal stuck lean. So basically the O2 sensor is stuffed. And it's telling me bank 1 sensor 3. So I know exactly which sensor to go for, which I'm pretty sure is kind of just underneath the car. I think it's after the cats. So what I decided to do, which I wouldn't normally do, was I got in touch with a customer about this one, because initially when the engine light came on before I plugged it in, because I say I was on my way home, the first thing I did was I sent him a picture of it and said, look mate, bit of a problem here. I've had the car 20 minutes. I appreciate I'm a dealer and I'm buying it and it's all on me. However, have you ever had this problem before? Because what I wanted to know was, if you've stuffed me, that's fair enough. But what is that problem? Because if it's something that's easy to fix, why wouldn't you just have fixed it? Anyway, this is how the series of text messages went. So I texted him, ever had this, mate? His response is, honestly, Rob, no. Have you turned it off and on again? Which admittedly I did try straight away. It was the first thing that I tried. I thought, I've tried that, no, so I'm going to and get the scanner out. Cars. Anyway, he's replied saying, it's always the way. I've had no issues with the car and it's always been 100% perfect. And crucially, what was put on this message, whatever it costs, I'll send you the money. Now, that isn't what I expected, to be honest, from this customer. Although when we were in the bar and we did the deal on the car, he did say, any problems, let me know and I'll pay for it, which always sounds, it's a bit odd. But anyway, this has kind of gone back and forth. I won't read through every message in here, but what he's basically said is, look, if there's any issues with that car, Rob, I will put it right, because you've bought it as a car that's right. And I spoke to him on the phone and I said, look, mate, you really kind of don't have to. And I genuinely actually feel a little bit uneasy, because it's not an expensive problem. If it was a big problem, we'd be having a different conversation. And he said, if I was buying a car from you, Rob, I'd expect it the other way around. Fair enough. So what I said to him, I sent him the remaining funds left, because there's some funds I needed to send back to him before the logbook came through. I held some back because he hadn't had his new logbook through. And he just said, look, knock it off out of those funds if you want to send it back. But I didn't feel right doing it. So I just sent him all of the money back. And I said, look, mate, if you want to send me money to go towards the problem, you're welcome to send me the money. But I agreed to send you this 500 quid. I'm sending you it and it is over to you. Anyway, in the meantime, I've been off work, sorting a couple of bits out in the house for a couple of days. I've come back in and he sent me this. This is an O2 sensor for Bank 1 Sensor 3 on a Jaguar F-Type. So can I just say, mate, if you're watching this, I really, really appreciate that. I mean, we've yet to fit it and see that it actually works, but I'm hoping it does. And I know that you ordered it from Jaguar because you've got a friend who works there, which is helpful. Now, the question on everybody's lips here is, did this customer know when he put this car into me on part exchange that it had a fault? And my initial reaction, if he hadn't have come to the party like he has done, is maybe he did know and he knocked it off. But the fact that this part is 150 quid or whatever, the fact that he's gone out of his way to buy it, send it to me, ask me to send the invoice for fitting, he's telling me he probably didn't know, otherwise he would have just done it in the first place, wouldn't he? So it turns out there are good people out there. This is the part that is required. Apparently they're really common, and it's a genuine part as well. Now, obviously, if you're a subscriber to the channel, you know that this is absolutely not my domain, and I still happen to have a Callum. So yet again, I've fixed everything myself. I'm going to be upset when Callum goes, because little jobs like that are actually really helpful that you can just quickly dive on and do. Anyway, right, sensor's been switched over. We have cleared the codes. I've just popped out now to get some fuel, and the light hasn't come back on. However, unfortunately, and I've got the sunglasses balanced on the top of my head for a good reason, I am going to have to take it out for a thorough road test now. And I've been really looking forward to this because unfortunately, while the car's had an engine light on, it's just been sat here waiting for the part. So I'm going to go for a nice little road test. You're going to join me, and I'm going to put a potential new cameraman to work. Wow. Oh, it is hard to remember the fact that this car had an engine light on only moments ago, because it is performing rather well indeed. I've got a soft spot for the Jaguar F-Type. I always have. I've had a soft spot for these since I first heard when I sat in a beer garden in Harrogate, of all places, and I heard this howling noise come down the road, and I'd never heard anything like it. I thought that just sounds intoxicating. Anyway, popped my head over the beer garden fence, and it was indeed a V6 Jaguar F-Type. It sounded exotic, I think is probably the best word for it, just enticing, like you wanted one. Anyway, subsequently, I've sold several of these cars, and I've always been torn between V6 or V8, and there's a massive debate on this when you're, into your Jags as to whether or not the V6 or the V8 one is the right one to go for. It certainly isn't the 2 litre that they brought out. Oh, sacrilege. Anyway, this is obviously the new shape, you can tell by the front end. They didn't do a lot with the back end, and the interior isn't a massive change on it, but the seats are absolutely glorious and really comfortable as well. So on the face of it, there's not a massive amount of difference, is there, between this one and an old one, and there is quite a big difference in price. However, this is 4-wheel drive. They did do a 4-wheel drive on the last one, but it is the thick end of, let's face it, if you're in the pub, 600 horsepower. It's 570, there or thereabouts, and it is absolutely brutal. Now, unfortunately, they've done something with the exhaust on the newer ones. They don't sound quite as shouty as the older ones, which, to be fair, as a petrol head, you're going, oh no, it's going to spoil it. But the one problem I had with the old Jaguar F-Type, the 5-litre V8, is it was going to be difficult to live with neighbours, because every time you fired it up, it was really, really aggressive. Whereas this, although it still sounds incredible, it's not as offensive, if that sort of makes sense. I think it looks beautiful. My original take on it when it was first launched was I didn't like the front end of it. I thought it looked really awkward. I didn't like the way that the bonnet met the bumper. I just thought it all looked a little bit unthought about. That's a word. However, it's really grown on me over the years. As with most new cars that come out, you kind of think, I'm not sure I could get on with that, and then the longer they're out for, the more you start to like them. BMW have been a prime example of that. By God, do they know how to make a car that looks awful initially and then turns into quite the handsome machine. I love this in every possible way. It sounds good, but it's not too obnoxious. It looks good. It's kind of got the appeal where this is the sort of car you could park it up outside your local block of flats down the council estate, and it won't look out of place. No one's going to run a key down it. You don't look too flashy. But at the same time, you could pull up to Grantley Hall for a nice afternoon cocktails with the ladies and gents, and again, it wouldn't look out of place. I think they've absolutely nailed it. Cost-wise, it is quite a bit difference in cost from the older one. So this is a 21 plate. It's done 24,000 miles. It's going to be around about 55 grand. Now, it's actually one of the cheaper ones on the internet, and that's because it is a 21 plate, which is the very early facelifts or new shape, new gen, whatever you want to call it. It handles really well, considering the fact that it is basically a shoe with a massive 5-litre in the front of it. I mean, it's not like a Porsche Cayman, and it's certainly not like a Lotus Elise, but you feel planted. You don't feel like you're getting out of shape. And as much as I really, really enjoy the old version where you've got the 5-litre in rear-wheel drive, that for me was probably arguably the one to have, but it was just a bit too shouty noise-wise. I loved the fact that you could just send that sideways at any given opportunity. It would just kick the back end out, not a problem at all. Whereas this feels a little bit more planted, and actually, when you're up in the horsepower, to this level of power, I mean, you're into supercar territory. It's not 16.3.7 this, it's naughty, and I think it's 180 something miles an hour, a speed you'll never get to on the UK roads. But you kind of feel better having 4-wheel drive system in it. You feel not more responsible, because it still feels like a bit of a hooligan's car, but you feel safer, I think is probably the right word to use. And on these tight, twisty, narrow country lanes, you want to feel like the car isn't trying to throw you into the local hedgerow. So I guess the question really is, does the car live up to expectations? And yeah, yeah, it really does. There's a lot of the old F-Type in this car, which isn't a bad thing. It's the very essence of the car that made me turn my head in that beer garden in Harrogate that one time. And ever since, to be fair, I'm a huge fan of these. Yes, they've got the little issues. I mean, an O2 sensor, it's not the end of the world, is it? But the other thing I quite like about it is because they've dulled the exhaust note down, which I know sounds like a thing that you shouldn't like, but it actually allows you to hear the supercharger more, if that makes sense. You can hear it whining and spooling up. Spooling up's the right word? Probably not. I think that's a turbo, Rob. Anyway, it sounds mega. And this is what I love about this job. So unfortunately, this car's going to have to go back into stock now because I do need to sell it. However, I have had the pleasure of driving it, albeit for a short few moments, just to make sure the engine light hasn't come back on, which it hasn't, so we've got great news there. But that's what I love about this. So when you're trying to find positives in it, I have a man with a 6-week-old baby, and somehow I'm still managing to just float about in a supercharged Jag on a bypass in 27 degrees temperature, giving it this. It's very, very fast. A massive, massive thank you to my subscriber. I'm not going to name you, mate, because I don't think you want to be. We didn't have that discussion, but you know who you are, mate. Thank you. You've come to the party. You've done the right thing. This car is exactly as it should be now. I'm very, very, very pleased. Unfortunately, I'm going to take it back to the unit now, clean it off and get it online, and I'll be going home in my wonky VW tow rag and hope the engine light continues to stay off on that. It's a bit off and on. Story for another day. But until next time, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to enjoy the last 5 minutes in this car, and I will see you next time, because I've just bought a modified M4, which has never ended well for me. So until next time, cheers.